We've all been wondering, how is Nintendo going to help differentiate Zelda Breath of the Wild 2? How are they going to make sure it feels like a step up from the first game? What will they do to elevate and improve the experience? Well, we may have just stumbled upon their secret sauce. What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from SwitchForce. Hit that like button if you're excited for Breath of the Wild 2. And after you hear what we found and what Nintendo could be doing, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Alright, Breath of the Wild 2 may use a similar Hyrule, but it looks like it might see a significant improvement of visuals or performance or both. Now this is due to a recent discovery. Alright, but let me backtrack a minute here and set this up. AMD has a tool very similar to DLSS called their Fidelity FX Super Resolution, abbreviated as FSR. Now what is FSR? Well, it's basically an upscaling tool that includes a sharpening algorithm that allows games to run and perform better by rendering less pixels and using this upscale. So effectively what's happening is like, yo, this game could not run at this frame rate on Switch because it's too powerful and too many graphics, and then the FSR comes in and says, boom, we made it work for you. Now how does this relate to Nintendo or Zelda? Well, you may have seen a video I posted earlier this week where I discussed how within the intellectual property of Nintendo Switch Sports online test, we see a marker for this FSR tool. And Nintendo surely would not give kudos to AMD if they weren't using their technology. Now, while DLSS is something that would need a much more powerful chip to work with, AMD's thing can work on the Switch as is right now. And then you take a peek at the recent Direct and you see that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 trailer looking all sorts of spiffy, like some of the best scenes, if not the best graphics we've ever seen come out of the Switch. Some of those landscapes, right, those vistas, very impressive. Off in the distance, waterfalls and all sorts of lighting in the cutscenes. Man, it looks so good. And it could be that Nintendo is employing this upscaling tech to make that possible. Now, if Monolith is using it for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and Nintendo says, we want to make that September release look good, don't you think they'd want to really make Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 look awesome? Maybe even more epic? Now, this could go one of two ways, all right? Potentially, they could use this to snazify things and make them look crisper. All right, they could sharpen them and make them look better. This is the route where the game would be 30 frames per second, but it would look better. All right, they would tighten everything up and you'd be like, wow, this looks notably better than Breath of the Wild did back in 2017. And that would be great because we on the same dang hardware as way back then. The OLED definitely makes things brighter, but it does not make them better. This, though, would allow that to happen. Now, the alternative path is that they could utilize this to try and maybe reach 60 FPS. Now, I think this one's more far-flung, but if they are implementing FSR, there is a world where they could say, okay, we're gonna have the same looking Hyrule, but you're gonna be able to play this at 60, and we're gonna make this newest Zelda experience, one for the record books, and one that performs like no other. King of running smooth. So you either get a little bit more juice out of the visuals or you get a little bit more juice out of the performance, but FSR would really be a secret sauce to help Breath of the Wild 2 be notably better than its predecessor. Now obviously we hope that they add some cool characteristics with Zelda where maybe you could play her, she has different abilities, obviously the arm is gonna do all sorts of nifty stuff, and we do hope that dungeons are back. I mean, they got the sky, they got the ground, let us go inside too. We want those dungeons and more than just mechanical animals floating around the lands, like give us an actual full-on puzzle box designed by the masters over at Nintendo. They do it better than anybody else. But I think a performance bump to show that, hey, the Switch still has legs, right? Nintendo has talked about wanting to make this console last a decade. And what better way than to show that Breath of the Wild 2 is a step ahead of previous games and maybe even anything else on the Switch. If they're able to put out Xenoblade Chronicles 3 in September, and then they're able to put out Bayonetta 3, say, in October, and then they're able to put out Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 in November, and all these games look and run really great, you're like, okay, the Switch can do some really sick stuff, especially on the action front, and especially on the wide open world front. That would be really nice to see. Now there's an even deeper connection here because Xenoblade Chronicles 3 looking mighty fine and being known as one of the games that wants to push the Switch hardware is worked on by Monolith Soft. They are the makers of that franchise, and Monolith Soft is known for also working with Nintendo on many of their titles, including Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. Now back in April of 2021, Monolith Soft made a major expansion and was hiring for 40 new positions. You could think that maybe they were just staffing up for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, but many of those positions specifically listed the Legend of Zelda franchise. What if Monolith Soft was getting ready for a more pretty Breath of the Wild 2? What if they've been staffing up and building their team so big so that they could put out the two best looking top tier Switch games we've ever seen? Xenoblade Chronicles 3 in September, and then hopefully Breath of the Wild 2 in November. I think there's absolutely a world where these games do stun us. And you notice we have not seen very much true gameplay of either. Maybe Nintendo is holding back a bit because they want to show us in a wow fashion at the next Summer Direct, yo, we can do graphics too. Maybe not like God of War or Horizon Forbidden West, but we can do something that you didn't think we could do. And this FSR would be that. I didn't think they ever would make a move to try and improve the performance of the Switch without another Switch. I mean, we all expected Switch Pro. I think a lot of people actually had Breath of the Wild 2 pegged as a launch title for the next Switch, whatever that was. And at this point, it's quite clear that Nintendo is riding their 100 million seller as far as they can. And this is like the smartest thing we've seen. Now, it'll be interesting to play Nintendo Switch Sports and see if we notice much there. But I have to imagine, given that it's more of a cartoony game with a simple sports theme, we probably won't see a whole lot of benefit from FSR, at least at first blush. I'll be interested to see data miners go in and see if they can tell anything that's happening under the hood. And also if Digital Foundry decides to tackle this issue and figures out what Nintendo Switch Sports is actually using Fidelity FX Super Resolution for. And then going forward, as we learn more about Xenoblade Chronicles 3, if the game continues to impress visually. I mean, just look at this trailer. The cutscenes are unlike anything else on Switch, and the environments are far more impressive than what we've seen in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Breath of the Wild, or any other Nintendo published title. Pretty much anything on Switch entirely. For me, gameplay is king, and I've always considered gameplay as the ways that they can elevate this Zelda. And let me be honest with you, if they do nothing to the gameplay, if they don't bring major upgrades like dungeons, I will be bummed. But this is another avenue where they're able to effect improvement and bring new things to a franchise that really wowed us when this Switch cycle started. And now maybe this can be a second era of fantastic looking games on Switch. I mean, that would be really a crowd pleaser. And then from there, you can imagine if Nintendo decides to continue this trend and does implement NVIDIA's more popular DLSS on a more powerful chipset, then the next Zelda after Breath of the Wild 2, 4K, very fancy, crispy, 60. I mean, we could be in for a world of jaw-dropping wonder. So keep your eyes peeled, okay? Because when we next see Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 gameplay, I want you to pay attention. Does it look notably better than its predecessor? Are they doing things to have this game run like a charm? And golly darn it, I really hope that we see that game soon. It seems like summer is our next chance, but Nintendo could surprise us with some sort of Zelda presentation smushed in between. In the meantime though, everybody, let me know what you think. Is FSR the future for Switch? And is this something you'd like to see them do for Breath of the Wild 2? Would a visual upgrade be a notable difference for you and something that you would feel is rewarding as you look towards the sequel? Or are visuals not that important, you love the art style, and you just want them to dive deep into more dungeons, maybe some sort of Zelda co-op, or all sorts of different mechanics that we can't possibly guess yet? Let me know what you think, and until next time, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Hit that like button on your way out. I appreciate all of you, and I hope you're staying safe, staying healthy, staying happy, staying positive, and staying hyped for Breath of the Wild 2. I cannot wait till there's more, and as soon as there is, you know I got you covered. Until that time, though, everybody, thanks again. SwitchForce out.